Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of our F1 2021 My Driver Career Mode here on the channel. Today, we head to the Silverstone GP here in Britain, a track that I really struggle at, probably my second to third worst track in F1 2021, simply because of the second sector on this racetrack. When you go through the sweeping right-hander where Hamilton took out Verstappen all the way down through there into the S's, you just lose so much time compared to the AI, and I really feel like today we're not going to have a much of a fighting chance to really put up a good performance here in our Aston Martin. So it's going to be a tough one. We're slowly trying to build this team back up after the update that changed the performances, but we definitely still got quite a bit of time here before we're going to be able to be a legitimate competitor. So, coming into this weekend, it was looking like it was going to be a nice, sunny, and bright weekend here in Silverstone. Thank goodness now, no rain on the way that we are going to have to worry about here as we would get ready for free practice number one. So, I didn't change my setup coming into this GP because I didn't really feel like I could have improved it a whole lot, but definitely think next season we might try and up our setup at this track a little bit further than what we have for today's episode here now as we had come through setting some promising pace throughout practice. We had now been on our race strategy program, and we were doing really good, actually. We were well above the Delta time, so I was thinking, you know what, we're going to be pretty competitive here in Britain. It's all about that second sector. How is that going to affect us? So we were 14th at the end of that first practice session. Our teammate of Sebastian Vettel there on the soft compound was a little bit, of course, further ahead of us. So we're just going to jump straight through into qualifying now here for the British GP. By the way, I'm going to be running some strict corner cutting regulations in the coming episodes, starting at, I think, Spa, after we have our summer break now, as I've been wanting to make that push to strict corner cutting, and then hopefully we can also make the final push to get rid of this racing line within the next season or so. Now, I mean, I don't feel like I necessarily need the racing line at all times. I just need it as more of my breaking point instead of looking for these signs on the side of the track with the boards with the 150, the 100, the 50. I just use that racing line as my breaking spot. So we get underway though in our qualifying session. It was not very great, but it was good enough. It got us through into Q2 there as we were P14 at the end of Q1 with a 126.576, and we were quite a ways off of our teammate of Sebastian Vettel, and we were losing as expected the most time in that second sector, exactly in those points we thought we would be losing that time. So we had come through into Q2 right now. My first lap, it was a little bit shaky, a little bit sloppy here now as we had come through the final few corners. Now it was a decent lap, and I was a little bit concerned when I crossed the line and realized how slow it was because I didn't feel like I was terribly far off. So we look at the time, there were a good half a second off of Sebastian Vettel there at the end of our first attempt. So we come through one more time trying to just find any amounts of time that we can, and you know what, we actually started to find some time here. We gained a 10th here within the first sector, and by the time we came through the S's, we had gotten almost 4/10 of a second faster here as I make a bit of a mistake there, go wide, catch the grass a little bit here, but then through the sweeping right-hander into this final sector, now we gain quite a bit of time right there. I kind of abused the track limits a little bit there, but we come through the final few corners into the penultimate turn. Half of a second gain is what we knew. We were already off of Sebastian Vettel, so it's not going to be a top 10. We crossed the line. We beat Sebastian for the time being there in P12, but we end up dropping back down to 14th place, and surprisingly only a few tenths off of our teammate of Sebastian, which was a nice little thing to see right there as we're going to get ready though for the British GP here, where we will start from P14.
We return once again then to the home of British motorsport and the birthplace of the Formula One World Championship. It's race day here at Silverstone, and it's time for the British Grand Prix. The 3.6 miles of the Silverstone circuit in Great Britain is hallowed ground to the Formula One faithful. We have 18 corners that wrap around this former World War II airbase and some good passing opportunities at the end of the DRS zones. And I'm joined once again by Anthony Davidson to bring you the lowdown for today's race. Let's have a chat about McLaren. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Young superstar Max Verstappen starts from pole position, and it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Bottas, Perez, Daniel Ricciardo, and Norris, Leclerc, Gasly, Sainz, and Yuki Tsunoda, Russell, Vettel, Esteban Ocon, the rookie, Latifi, Ireland, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Guan Yu Zhou, Stroll, and Mick Schumacher. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out. Then let's see who can prevail today.
Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, front row in Britain. Where have we seen that happen before? Ready to go lights out here in Silverstone. Lewis Hamilton right now has a lot of work to do. He has had a miserable season after the first couple of races where he was very strong, won a few GPs, and then ever since then it's just been all downhill for the Mercedes team, who is, you know, the best on the grid right now. So they got a lot of work to do today here in Britain, and Lewis Hamilton has an opportunity to get back on track. They got to make sure they don't make any mistakes with strategy. Lewis cannot make any mistakes on the track here, as we are ready to go 5 lights out now, as we're right behind our teammates of Sebastian Vettel. Is 5 lights and they are out. We are going here from Britain. Lewis Hamilton with a decent start, not going to be good enough though to put the attack to Max Verstappen down into turns 1. Hamilton just about under attack from Perez there, as you see Bottas just behind Perez. Then you got the McLaren, I believe that is Daniel Ricciardo, in behind the Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas. Now as you got Ferrari, you got AlphaTauri, BMW up in here. There you see Carlos Sainz scrapping it out with Yuki Tsunoda just in front of our teammates of Sebastian Vettel, but a very calm and clean start there, as I'm under attack actually from the Williams here as we go down this long straightaway towards that sweeping left and then right hand carousel. Now as they're side by side in front of us between Tsunoda as well as Sainz. Vettel ready to pounce on an opportunity here if it opens up there, as they're still going to be side by side between Tsunoda and Carlos. Now as you can see, Verstappen off to a very strong start here in the GP. Now is this still going to be side by side down here into a very dangerous corner, but they make it work right there, unlike what Verstappen and Hamilton were able to accomplish earlier this year in real life. Now as you see the Haas duo of Schumacher as well as Stroll at the very bottom of the grid now. So I was a bit surprised by how clean that start was, and at the same time pretty happy with that now, as we kind of were able to settle down pretty quick here and get a rhythm going and just do the best we can with what we have. I really wasn't expecting a whole lot here today from Silverstone now, as we had come through now into this final sector, and we were down to P14, or well, holding P14 I should say, because that's exactly where we had started this GP, right here behind Esteban Ocon now as we come through that final turn. So a little bit of oversteer right there as we came through to complete the first lap, but I was just happy that we were able to hold our own, and I didn't really know how the rest of the GP was going to go after this first lap because of that second sector specifically. And here you're going to see on lap 3, we were 0.8 of a second behind Ocon going into that corner. We lost about 0.3 of a second in that one right-handed, just because the AI can go flat out for some reason when you shouldn't be able to. And then through the S's here, we lose more time. So we end up losing between 0.4 to 0.5 a second through that section, of course, every single lap. So by the time we come through to lap 5, we're 2.3 seconds behind Esteban Ocon, and there's just nothing I can do. This isn't a setup thing. It's just straight up the AI just being able to do what they shouldn't be able to do and go with F1 2020 and full throttle basically through that right-hander. So a little bit later on lap 6 though, Sebastian Vettel actually ran into the back of Yuki Tsunoda and picked up some wing damage on the front of his car. So he was having a decent run, but obviously he picks up some damage. He was way slow. He did not come into the pit lane right away because he couldn't. And now here I was running down Sebastian right to his gearbox now on lap 7 here as we're trying to find a way around him. He is actually not going to let us go. He is going to fight us as hard as he possibly can here now, as we're going to go side by side down this straightaway into the sweeping right-hander. I decided, you know what, I'm just going to wait. I backed out, wanted to play it safe, and then we put the attack back to him here as we head down to the S's now. Sebastian does not care whatsoever that he has a lot of damage and he's in the way, but thank goodness we're able to get past him and move up on into P13. Verstappen now on lap 10 comes into the pit lane. Perez is going to stay out. Hamilton, who actually dropped down to P3, by the way, on the opening run, comes into the pit lane along with Daniel Ricciardo. Charles Leclerc there for Ferrari will come in. Lando Norris will be staying out. Gasly as well into the pit lane now. As we, of course, are staying out, we're trying to stretch this out a little bit. Now, Zoe, actually, as this is happening, it looks like we've had an incident on the track. There, a big moment there, as it looks like a Haas as well clipped the front of Guan Yu Zhou, I believe this is now, as it's not going to be a safety car, but let's see what in the world just happened. Oh, the Williams actually had an engine failure, and that would lead for Guan Yu Zhou to run into him, and then the Haas comes through and just swipes right into the side of his side pod there and takes that off. No DNFs as that's happening. Nicholas Latifi's out, of course, with the engine failure, but more pit stops are happening now. Perez is coming to the pit lane on lap 12, and now you see Lando Norris is in, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon. I'm continuing to stay out because I'm trying to push this as late as I can now before we come in for our set of medium tires. But here comes Max Verstappen, the first one that came into the pit lane. He is easily going to be out in front of Perez. So now the question is, how can he hold on over Perez as well as maybe Lewis Hamilton? But Lewis Hamilton is on an extremely weird strategy. Everybody took mediums except for Lewis. He put on the hard tires. So I think Mercedes has potentially just thrown away everything for Lewis Hamilton in terms of potentially winning this race or even finishing on the podium, because he's not going to have the pace that a lot of the guys behind him on the medium tires are going to have. But now you see myself on the pit lane here on lap 13. I really felt so disconnected, you could almost say, from this GP just because of just this weird AI pace thing through that second sector that I can't do anything about. So we were just kind of running our own race and just holding on and surviving and getting to the end of this GP. We should be able to beat our teammate of Sebastian Vettel now because he's on an older set of tires. He lost a lot of time in general before he had come into the pit lane after picking up that wing damage. And sure enough, we will get out of the pit lane in front of our teammate of Sebastian Vettel. So simply because of his misfortune, we are going to be able to beat him here today in the British GP when he clearly had more pace than us. And there's been multiple races this season where Sebastian's had more pace than us, but we've been able to maybe use strategy to our advantage to beat him now. Honestly, I think he's outpaced us way more than we have outpaced him now on lap 13 as well. This was a bit missed, wasn't when we were live looking at us on the pit lane, but Daniel Ricciardo was putting the attack to Hamilton on those hard tires, Ricciardo on the medium compound, and then he would once again put the attack to Hamilton and get around him into the right-hander. And then Lewis was under attack now from Lando Norris on the next lap of lap 14 here. In the same spot, Ricciardo trying to pass him a lap prior there. You see Norris is going to go around the outside there as they're going to head down that long straightaway towards that sweeping high-speed right-hander that the AI can apparently go full throttle through now, as it's going to be a big scrap actually here between these two now, as Lewis is not going to back out, but he just doesn't have enough in it, and Lando goes through into the top 5. So now Bottas finally on lap 16 from the lead is coming into the pit lane. He's going to put on the soft tire, switching off of the medium tire. So will he have anything for Max Verstappen? I really doubt it's going to happen, but you never know here. As well, it looks like Bottas could end up coming out behind Perez, so that could pretty much write him off potentially now. As if you see Verstappen goes to the lead, Perez will go through into second place. Now, I myself here on lap 16 actually was dealing with our DRS issue, so the DRS was shut closed. Obviously, doesn't affect us. We haven't been in position to get DRS all race long, but if we somehow found ourselves within a second of someone, we wouldn't even be able to use our DRS at this point anyways. So that was unfortunate. Just 10 laps to go in the British GP, which has been probably the worst pace we've set all season, but just nothing we can do about it through here. I felt like I was hauling the mail through this whole section of track, but it just wasn't making a difference, unfortunately. So just at this point, pretty much bringing the car home, trying to survive and hope for maybe no mechanical issues there. As you see, Valtteri Bottas sets the fastest lap of the GP at this point in time now, as he is definitely setting a good pace, just not good enough to really make a difference here and compete for the victory today, as it looks like Max Verstappen, who's already leading the points, could be potentially cruising to victory. Hamilton now on lap 20 under attack from Pierre Gasly. He's even going to get passed by an AlphaTauri BMW there on the medium compound tires. Once again, Hamilton not going to back down without a fight, but now he's got nothing on the exit of the corner, but he does have that Mercedes speed, so it's not quite over yet. They're going to be side by side once again down the straightaway, just like Hamilton forced it on Lando. He's going to do it with a Gasly, but once again, not enough. Hamilton, Mercedes has failed him today with the strategy, and Hamilton continues to fall out of the championship picture. And at this point, unless he goes on an absolute tear and wins a bunch of GPs, I don't think there's any possible realistic way, Lewis Hamilton goes on to win his 8th World Drivers title here this season in our second season of our My Driver career mode. In the first one, he looked in control right up until the Japanese Grand Prix when everything went wrong with the DNF, and then at that point in time, Valtteri Bottas went on a tear and won his first ever driver's title for Mercedes. And as of right now, it doesn't even look like Mercedes is going to win in general in terms of the Drivers' Championship or even the Constructors' Championship, even when they still have the best car on the grid. So quite crazy to watch this Mercedes kind of downfall we're witnessing right now in our My Driver career mode. But here I was now in the closing laps of this GP, just bringing it home. We were actually setting a decent pace towards the end of this race. I wasn't losing too much time to Esteban Ocon there for Alpine. Now as we were staying around 5 or so seconds behind him, he was still pulling away, just nowhere near to the effect that it was happening earlier in this GP. So we come straight through to the final lap of the British GP. It has been a rough race. I think you've seen more of what was happening with other drivers than you saw with me today, and hopefully you actually like that. I really like to build on more of not what's happening with me in these races, because we're only one part of this series, and I want to still build around of what's happening with other drivers in our series in each and every single race. So hopefully you enjoy that aspect of me really trying to push about what's going on for these race wins and just in the midfield and in the back part of the field as well. Now as Max Verstappen though and Perez, it's going to be a 1-2 here in Britain. Verstappen wins here. He'll be on top of the podium. Perez second. Like I said, Bottas will come through to get the final podium position, and not going to be enough for Mercedes to close in on Red Bull today. Now is Hamilton all the way down in 8th place there. He stayed with, or he stuck with Pierre Gasly here in the closing laps, but just didn't have enough of an opportunity to be able to pass him. Tsunoda is going to get 9th. Carlos Sainz will wrap up the top 10 here as we come through the final few corners in the Silverstone circuit now, as it was a very long, rough GP, but we at least made it and survived, and we somehow still beat our teammate Vettel, who had, of course, had a lot of misfortune there with that wing damage, as we ended up P13 in Britain. And hopefully next season when we come back here, we can have a way better showing it that time out. So now we got some post-race celebrations here as Mick Schumacher and Haas somehow manages to win Driver of the Day.
Plenty of action here at Silverstone. It was a memorable race, and what an impressive victory. Anthony, tell me, what was it that helped them achieve this success?
Well, this was a real team victory. They put together a solid strategy today that appeared well suited to the conditions out on track. The driver did everything that was expected of them in the moment to really execute the team's plan to perfection. A shining example of how F1 really is a team sport.
Here come today's winners. The team at Red Bull have done a phenomenal job recently. It's clear to see that they've put in the work, and they should be proud of the victory they secured here.
There you saw the post-race celebrations up there on the podium. Verstappen ended up actually getting the fastest lap, so an extra point to him as well. As you see the rest of the finishing order, Schumacher in 17th place got Driver of the Day. Callum Ilott ended up a lap down there, as you saw in the order. It might have been him, actually, that had that contact with Latifi, and I just got that wrong because I originally said it was Guan Yu Zhou. But there you see the standings on your screen, and you see Mercedes is 65 points behind Red Bull. So the Constructors is not out of the picture for Mercedes, but the Drivers' Championship at this point is going to be pretty tough no matter what now, as we are, about that halfway point in the season or so, and we got the summer break coming up, and I think after that summer break, going into Spa, that's really when Mercedes has to get their act together if they want to put the fight to Max Verstappen and that Red Bull Racing team, as Verstappen looks for his first ever driver's title as well. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. I would, of course, like to thank you for taking the time of your day to watch this episode. You see Verstappen, ever since Monaco, his worst finish is second. He's had 3 wins and 3 second place finishes. Started the season off in the top 3, actually, in Bahrain. His worst finish was 19th, but that was because of a glitch in the game. He was on the podium, and then it glitched him all the way down to 19th place. So Verstappen, in reality, has finished on the podium every single race this season without that glitch. But we'll see what happens in the next one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great day, everybody.